And welcome to Encounters of the Strange Kind with yours truly, Denise Harris, tonight. And tonight we're going to discuss the creepy crypts and catacombs of the world. So stay tuned for that. And as always, this is brought to you by King's Cannabiz. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Despite the lies that you're making, your love is mine for the taking. My love is just waiting to turn your tears to roses. Despite the lies that you're making, your love is mine for the taking. My love is just waiting to turn your tears to roses. I wonder why we came about. Was it for love or to let sin abound? Isn't it a wonder? Awake from blood-thick dreams, remove all the stones from our hearts. We must all believe.
Okay, before we get started on our tour of the catacombs and crypts, I have something special to say. Happy anniversary, KBLP LLC, 3 years. It's our third anniversary. And here's a shout out to everybody in all the shows. Of course, Ike Diaz, he does the jam. Our own Chris Stevens, the biggest freak of all, with Freaks in the Basement. Absolutely. Michelle Auger. Thank you, Michelle, for being my partner in crime on Planet B.O.B., which is her baby, and I love it. And Ecto and Encounters every other Saturday, so next week. So thank you, Michelle. Steven out there, thank you for all your support and hard work. Sonia, thank you for being a part of KBLP LLC. Zach, thank you for joining us. Check out Lad Brad. You can check out all the shows on the KPL Facebook page, KBLP LLC, and on YouTube, KBLP LLC4. And all of our listeners out there, thank you. You make this possible for us. So thank you. Happy anniversary, everybody. So I have a special song for you. So enjoy.
But be careful you don't spill it. Happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. And happy, they're both as happy as can be. Celebrating merrily their happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary. We now state emphatically it's happy anniversary. Not another day could be a happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy, 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 happy anniversary.
All right, knock it off.
And for the happy anniversary song. So happy anniversary, KBLP LLC. So thank you much. Also, sports, my sports show, TWD, DWD. So thank you. So hope you all had a good week. Kind of dropped the ball last night. Sorry, guys. I had a migraine from hell, the stupid weather. Anyway, let's get to it. Are you ready? We're going to start with, and I'll put it in the chat, so join me there, please. We're going to go to the Capuchin Monastery catacombs. I'll put it in here. My fingers would cooperate. Capuchin Monastery. There's a lot of creepy places out there. You wouldn't think that these places. I mean, who does this? Seriously, it's kind of creepy. What they do and what's in these places. There it is, Capuchin Monastery Catacombs. Okay, and this has to be one of the most unusual and ghoulish sites in Palermo. And if you're looking for a conversation starter over dinner, well, here you go. So come with me if you dare. Hi, Rachel. Thank you, sweetie. Glad you're here. Sometimes I wonder. My fingers don't want to work. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, come with me if you dare on this. I wish I could. We had visual here. I really do, because the pictures are just gruesome. They are. Oh, I miss you guys too. Excuse me. So this all started in the 1600s. A cemetery was overseen by the Capuchin monks. Was full. The cemetery was full. So instead of expanding the traditional burial grounds, when Brother Silvestro of Gubbio died, the monks decided to excavate the crypts below the cemetery, and they mummified him so they could continue to be and pray with him. Okay. It is this monk who greets you at the entrance to the catacombs all these hundreds of years later. After a few centuries of this being a practice only for the Capuchin monks, they decided to expand and offer this type of burial to the residents of Palermo, who could afford it. Preservation methods for the bodies has been perfected by the monks over the years, such as a combination of the natural atmosphere of the catacombs and a series of drying rooms with a ceramic pipe draining system began the process. Isn't that crazy? Ooh. But you'll live forever. You'll be immortal. I could do that. Anyway, the bodies were then bathed in a vinegar solution and stuffed with hay. Families provided clothing to dress their loved ones and frequently came to visit them. This was a costly endeavor. It was a sign of prestige and one that only the wealthiest families in Palermo could afford due to the expense of the upkeep. And sometimes that included regular costume changes. There you go. Crazy. Somebody was there a couple of years ago, and the ghost of the woman there she was accused of tormenting a German soldier during World War II by appearing repeatedly to ask for sex. And when he declined, the story got weirder. Okay. Let me see. And as for her, she died a virgin and was mummified and placed in a locked chapel dedicated solely to the virginal dead. Apparently dying with your virginity intact was something of a feat back in old Palermo. Okay, there you go. The ward rooms are divided into separate sections. Priests are dressed in their clerical vestments, and military and public officials still wear their dress uniforms. There are dedicated rooms for virgins, like we said, women, men, children, and infants. Some bodies are embalmed and displayed in glass caskets, while others are hung in a standing position from the walls. If that's not creepy, I don't know what is. Many of the bodies are now protected by wire cages because people were taking clothing and bones as macabre souvenirs. Ooh, what do you think you're bringing back with you? God. One of the most famous and heartbreaking residents of the catacombs is Rosalia Lombardo. Rosalia was just 2 years old when she died, tragically, of pneumonia. She appears dressed in a party dress, as if she is just sleeping in a glass coffin, her body perfectly preserved with a slight purple cast. The embalming technique was a mystery until an Italian biological anthropologist who works with the Institute for Mummies and the famous Iceman in Bolzano tracked down the living relatives of the embalmer. Alfredo was a Sicilian taxidermist and embalmer. He died in 1933. He had handwritten notes outlining a chemical formula that account for the incredible condition of the sweet lost Rosalia. The catacombs are said to hold, and this is, I'm not exaggerating, they are said to hold 8,000 bodies, some of them quite notable. Rumor has it that celebrated writer of the novel, The Leopard, Giuseppe Tomasi, is here, but his body is actually buried at the nearby cemetery. There are members of the Sicilian aristocracy, though, lawyers, doctors, and artists, and even the son of a Tunisian king inside. Their preserved bodies dressed in clothes they wore in life, resting for eternity below the streets of Palermo. Can you imagine? I wish I could show you some of these pictures, because some of them are the actual pictures from there. And these mummies are just standing in these niches in the walls. That is just creepy, creepy, creepy. So that is our first one of the night, the Capuchin Monastery Catacombs. Crazy stuff. Now, of course, one of the more famous ones is we're going to go to the Brno Ossuary. This is Brno Ossuary. And that basically means bones. So, ossuary, bones. Yeah, I know that, don't I? Ha, ha, ha. Another creepy place. These places are all over. Who knew? You never know what's beneath your feet, right? It's just crazy, crazy. Excuse me. Okay, this is Brno. It's ossuary at the Church of St. James. Brno. Let me see. Okay, this is... it's just amazing what's under there. Okay. This is in the Czech Republic. It's actually the Ossuary of St. James in Brno, Brno. It's located next to the Church of St. James and is the second largest in Europe. The chilling primacy is held by the Paris Ossuary. It was discovered during a land survey in 2001, and the number of people buried there is crazy. Anthropological analysis show that it was a place of burial victims of plague and cholera, the 30 Years' War, and the Swedish siege. It's just crazy. Excuse me. And in 2012, the ossuary underneath the Church of St. James was open to the public. More than 10 years after this unique place was discovered during the survey in 2001. The ossuary can be visited throughout the year. There you go. Guided tours are offered every 30 minutes in groups of no more than 20. And believe it or not, due to high demand, you have to book in advance. So there you go. Anthropological analysis proves that these skeletal remains belongs to victims of medieval plague and cholera epidemics, war battles, and Swedish siege. A cemetery adjacent to the Church of St. James had existed on the present-day square in the 13th century, and just like other cemeteries, it had been established within the city walls, which is why a subsequent expansion, albeit needed, was impossible. You couldn't expand. It was inside the city. Its capacity soon proved insufficient with regard to the growing city, and new burial methods had to be introduced. 10 to 12 years after the funeral, the grave of the deceased had to be opened and the remains removed, only to make room for a new deceased person. The contents of the graves were stored in special underground ossuaries. A 3-room crypt was probably built for this very purpose, right underneath the floor of the church in the 17th century. Initially, the number of skeletal remains was increasing slowly, but around the 1750s, skeletal remains from former church crypts started to form 2 big piles. The speed at which these rooms were filled often increased as a result of plague and cholera, which claimed thousands of lives. The permanent lack of space for the bones led to the expansion of the ossuary in 1741. As it turned out, the most practical solution was the expansion of the new ossuary underneath the cemetery and its connection to the crypt of the church. However, the new space was filled out in only 6 years, and the city administration started negotiations on further expansion via connection with the Chapel of the Dead that was located nearby. However, the digging of the connecting tunnel was stopped halfway through, and the plan was never completed. Excuse me. Once the crypt and the ossuary underneath the cemetery were filled Once the crypt and ossuary underneath the cemetery were filled, the staircase from the nave was covered over with a stone plate with a Latin inscription. Following the reforms introduced by Joseph II, the church cemetery was closed in 1784 due to health concerns. The skeletal remains were moved to the crypt. The wall of the cemetery was torn down, and the area around the church was paved with obsolete headstones. Eventually, the ossuary and its size and location fell into oblivion. Therefore, it was a huge surprise when the survey prior to the renovation of the square around the church started in 2001. Several 4-meter probes proved the existence of a large burial complex. Some rooms were filled all the way to the top. It was estimated they contained the skeletal remains of as many as, and I'm not exaggerating, 50,000 people. 50,000 people down in there, filled to the top, filled to the ceiling. Analysis have shown that many of them fell victim to medieval plague and cholera, the 30-Year War, or the Swedish siege. Sooner or later, the accumulated humidity and molds would have destroyed the bone material, and the vault would have collapsed, causing disturbance of traffic on the busy square above it. The only way to save this unique landmark was revitalization. Excuse me, goodness. Always when I start something. In the process, all the remains were removed, cleaned, and rearranged to the final resting place. It now serves as an example of burial methods at one of the oldest cemeteries. Woo! Crazy, crazy. 50,000. Not just, a couple thousand. 50,000 skeletal remains under there. And that is in the Czech Republic. Crazy, crazy. Okay, we're going to go to one of the most popular, of course, we've all heard of it, the Paris Catacombs. And we all know about it from as above, so below. So, right? We all know that from there. No, we all knew about this. This is crazy, crazy. It's just weird how many, I just saw a show on that, where they just, you have the cemetery and stuff, which was in the town way back, and they just built towns right above it. It's insane, really, how much it did happen back then. You have cemeteries and stuff right below the town. They just built right over it. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff, really. You can go on tours for this, but you have to book way in advance. You can purchase a ticket. It's crazy. Crazy, crazy. But it's amazing how many cities were built on top of burial grounds or cemeteries. Crazy. Okay, the history of the Paris Catacombs starts in the late 18th century, when major public health problems tied to the city's cemeteries led to a decision to transfer their contents to an underground site. Paris authorities chose an easily accessible site that was, at the time, located outside the capital. The former tomb quarries, under the plain of Montrouge. In operation since at least the 15th century, and then abandoned, these quarries were a small part of the labyrinth that extended under the city approximately 800 hectares, whatever that is. Preparation of the site and the organization of bone transfers were entrusted to Charles Axel Guillemot, an inspector at the Department of General Quarry Inspection. The mission, which had been founded on April 4th, 1777 by Louis XIV, was to consolidate the abandoned quarries following major collapses of the ground under Paris in the mid-18th century. The first excavations were made from 1785 to 1787 and concerned the largest cemetery in Paris, the Saint Innocent Cemetery, which had been closed in 1780 after consecutive use for nearly 10 centuries. You know how many bodies that is? A consecutive use for nearly 10 centuries. That's crazy. The tombs, common graves, and charnel house were emptied of their bones, which were transported at night to avoid hostile reactions from the Parisian population and the church. Sneaky, weren't they? The bones were dumped into 2 quarry wells and then distributed and piled into the galleries by the quarry workers. Transfer continued after the French Revolution until 1814, with the suppression of parochial cemeteries such as Saint Eustache, Saint Nicolas des Champs, and the Bernardines Convent in the center of Paris. They were begun again in 1840 during urban renovation by Louis Philippe and the reconfiguration of the city from 1859 to 1860. The site was consecrated as the Paris Municipal Ossuary on April 7, 1786, and from that time forward took on the mythical name of Catacombs, in reference to the Roman catacombs, which had fascinated the public since their discovery. Starting at 1809, the catacombs were open to the public by appointment only. A register was placed at the end of the circuit where visitors could write their impressions. It was filled very rapidly because these visits had quickly become a success with both the French and foreigners. As the years passed, the ossuary became the resting place of many illustrious individuals. In 1787, the Count of Artois, the future Charles X, visited the site in company of a group of court ladies. In 1814, Francis I, the Austrian emperor, took a tour there, and in 1816, Napoleon III descended into the catacombs with his son. During the 19th century, visiting arrangements constantly changed, from total closing to monthly or quarterly openings. They are now open to everyone without requiring authorization, and they welcome nearly 500,000 people a year. It's crazy. So the Paris catacombs, it's just crazy. And of course, we all know the spooky story of it. So they, because of all this in the building, they just took everybody at night and put them in there. Wasn't that nice? So the Paris catacombs, it was crazy. I'm not sure how many people they think is in there. But they solved the cemetery crisis, apparently. So there you go. Probably a lot from the guillotines, too. Now here's a little side story here. Recently, The Guardian reported on a British health expert's proposal to bury bodies alongside roads. The idea of lining thoroughfares with corpses may seem macabre, you think? But it could promote the planting of new woodlands through green burial and help address the nation's scarcity of cemetery space. Would you want to be buried alongside a road? And this isn't the first time the living have had to tackle the problem of the growing population of the dead. And that sparked, of course, way back then, that sparked the Paris catacombs. And urban cemeteries in Paris were very unpleasant places in the 18th century. They were buried there, a busy central neighborhood with an active market. They were just put there. Wow. And the one that they moved, the Cemetery of the Holy Innocents, was the oldest burial ground in the city since 1186. That's a lot of people. Now, come on. That's insane. Of course, the health concerns, the festering cemetery, they were afraid of health issues, which of course is very understandable. Crazy crazies. I just want to know. Trying to see if I can get a number, but I don't think. Oh. So instead of, I guess this is kind of cool. Most major cities have had to contend with the debt of previous generations as they grew. In Paris, the solution was to create an underground city of the dead. So there you go, the Paris catacombs. That is just, that would be something to see, though. It really would be. Really would be something. Okay, on to the next. We are next going to the monastery of San Francisco in Lima. Kind of crazy. Yeah, this is... They call it Exploring the Monastery of San Francisco, Lima, in the creepy catacombs. So there you go. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So this is there's a Spanish name for it, but it's for Saint Francis Monastery, Basilica and Convent of Saint Francisco Lima. De San Francisco is a Spanish name for Saint Francis Monastery, located in Lima, Peru. The church and convent are part of the historic center of Lima, which was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1991. Aside from a church and a monastery, it also contains a library and catacombs. In this church, Jude the Apostle is venerated. At the Feast of St. Jude Thaddeus, a 1.5-ton weighing silver stand is carried round in procession by 40 people starting from the convent. It is estimated that 25,000 bodies were laid to rest in the catacombs. The crypts, built of bricks and mortar, are very solid and have stood up well to earthquakes. The catacombs served as a burial place until 1808, when the city cemetery was opened outside Lima and contained thousands of skulls and bones. The catacombs were rediscovered in 1943. It is also believed that there existed secret passageways that connected to the cathedral and the tribunal of the Holy Inquisition. Ooh. And the catacombs are filled with skulls and bones, and they're neatly organized to form geometric figures. Well, isn't that nice? I don't know. Wow. I'm sorry. Now I have another number. More than 70,000 people. Crazy. Crazy, crazy. I don't know. That's kind of creepy, but it's cool. Wow. So that is there. There's formed a geometric forms. I wish I could show you a picture, because it's very cool. Very cool looking. That's amazing what they could do. So that is in Lima. And they are the biggest attraction is a library in there. Who knew there would be a library in there, right? Who knew? a little more history on it. It's beside the Cathedral of Lima, probably the most significant religious complex in Lima. The church has a massive, impressive main portal. The affiliated convent and the two churches form together the most successful, impressive monument of colonial architecture. The Church and Convent of San Francisco is consecrated in 1673, completed in 1774. Originally, the complex consisted of 7 cloisters, but with the alteration of the Avenida Avencay in the 40s, parts of the monastery were demolished, others separated from the main structure. Crazy. You can get tours in Spanish or English also. Yeah, there's kind of a ghastly fascination with these catacombs. It's kind of crazy. It remains one of the most exceptional legacies of the Viceroyal period. It features a library. The monastery has a library that features 25,000 ancient texts. An Islamic-inspired dome carved in wood, and the most chilling aspect, of course, a series of catacombs to have on display the bones of more than 50,000 people. They're saying about 70, so I don't know. They were forgotten for a long time, and they believe they're connected to the city's cathedral and other churches through a network of underground tunnels. Can you imagine the work involved in this? At the time of their construction, the crypts were the burial grounds for members of guilds and brotherhoods. The bones are laid out in geometric shapes, especially in mandala patterns, suggesting that whoever placed them favored a medical physical purpose before a useful one. The ossuaries, at least those that are more than 10 meters deep, are supposed to absorb seismic waves. Nonetheless, the way the femurs, tibia, and craniums are placed echo a symbolic or ritualistic intention. Something that, lacking an explanation, is both spine-chilling and sublime at once. If you visit this place, it promises to be a mystical experience that will remind you of death and eternity. Can you imagine? I mean, we're over, let's see, how many bones have we? I mean, it's just thousands upon thousands of them. That's crazy, and I have hair in my eye. Hang on, there it is. Okay, hate that. All right. So you creeped out, with all these skeletons and remains of people and mummification and all this yet? We're getting to it here. We have St. Stephen's Cathedral up next. Excuse me. We're going to do 6. I have 12, so we're going to do 6, take a quick break, and come back with the last 6. So St. Stephen's Cathedral is next. And I've been reading up on these, and it's really crazy. It's creepy, but really fascinating at the same time. Excuse me, let me get a drink here. This one is in Vienna. It's a magnificent Gothic edifice known as the Mother Church of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese. It is one of Vienna's most culturally significant landmarks, known throughout Austria and the world as an important heritage site. Trying to just skip over part of this stuff that I wrote down. Okay. One of its most prominent features of the building is its towers. They scrape the sky with their mottled, ornate spires. The tallest, affectionately known as Steffi, stands at a staggering
446 feet high, and has become an icon of the city's skyline, visible almost from anywhere in Vienna. The Pomeranian, one of Europe's largest free-swinging bells, lives in the North Tower and is etched with images of the Virgin Mary. Legend has it Beethoven's deafness first became apparent to him when he observed birds flying away from the tower, yet could not hear the sound of the Pomeranian ringing. During the final days of World War II, the cathedral was torn apart by flames after falling victim to the aerial bombings, causing the original Gothic timbered-style roof to be completely destroyed, along with, of course, with much of the building. However, it was renovated and fully restored by 1952, with help from Austrian citizens who donated large sums to recover it. Inside the cathedral, ornate Gothic columns supporting the roof tell tales of the saints, with countless solemn faces peering out from the stone walls. And this is kind of creepy. The servant Madonna, Saint Sebastian, and Christ, whose beard is made, this is kind of spooky creepy, from real human hair, are some of the most notable things. Beneath the cathedral, chambers containing the remains of around 10,000 deceased are arranged in tiers stacked on top of one another. A part of the church has been sealed off from the public since 1783. So, there you go. That's crazy. They're arranged in tiers stacked upon each other. Okay. Interesting. So, and you can go visit. So there you go. St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. So if I really need to add up how many bodies we've had so far. So I don't know. Okay, next on the list, Paul's Catacombs. I don't know who Paul is, but they're his. Paul's Catacombs. Interesting. It is kind of a morbid fascination. It really is, just to see what they did. It's kind of, I don't know. And this is in Malta. This is where it's St. Paul's Catacombs. They're some of the most prominent features of Malta's early Christianity archaeology. The archaeological clearing of the site has revealed an extensive system of underground galleries and tombs dating from the 3rd to the 8th centuries. Ooh. The site was first fully investigated in 1894 by Dr. Antonio Caruna. It is now managed by the Heritage Malta. St. Paul's Catacombs are part of a large cemetery once located outside the walls of the ancient Greek city, now covered by the smaller Rabat. It also comprises the catacombs of St. Agatha, San Cataldo, St. Augustine, and others. The cemetery probably originated in the Phoenician Punic period. As in Roman tradition, Phoenician and Punic burials were located outside the city walls. The many tombs discovered in areas outside the known line of the Roman city suggested that the city was close to equal size. It's equal size to the cemetery, so there you go. The early tombs consisted of a deep rectangular shaft with 1 or 2 chambers dug from the sides. This type of burial was used well into the Roman occupation of the islands, but the chambers grew larger and more regular in shape over time. It's possible that this enlargement it ended up joining neighborhood tombs and led to the creation of small catacombs, which became the norm by the 4th century AD. Who knew, right? These catacombs were still in use until the 7th and 8th century. Some of the catacombs were used again during the re-Christianization of the island around the 13th century. Of course, it's open. You can go visit. Apparently, these are real, highly sought-after places to go to. You have to book well in advance to see these places. And you can access over 20 of the catacombs. The main complex covers an area of more than 2,000 square meters. So far, the largest catacomb ever to be found on this island. It's large enough to have served as a communal burial ground in successive phases of their history. The 2 halls at the bottom of the entrance stairs show 2 tables, circular tables. Let's try this again. Let's try this one more time. The 2 halls at the bottom of the entrance stairs show 2 tables. These are tables hewn out of living rock and used for ceremonial meals commemorating dead relatives. So there you go. The complex contains almost all of the burial types found in the Maltese repertoire. The best represented are the so-called Baldacchino tombs. They're freestanding, canopied burials. They dominate the main corridors of the complex. So, freestanding, canopied burials. So, they're freestanding and have drapes over them? I'm not sure. They dominate the main corridors of the complex. Their 4 elegant arches and supporting pillars are exemplary. Other decorations within this catacomb include illustrations and messages. Another catacomb is much smaller than the first. The surgical tools carved in relief on one of the 3 blocking stones suggests it was a burial place of a particular family. Hi, Sonia. Glad that you're here. Good to see you. It's just crazy. There's 24 catacombs, and they involved all Christian, pagan, and Jewish burials. But this particular one that had surgical tools carved into the stone, it was either a family or a group of surgeons that were buried there. Apparently, they were also, kind of special spaces for these people. It's kind of crazy. It's just, and people well in advance have to get tickets. It's just crazy. The network of these tombs was rediscovered, of course, in 1894. They were cleared and surveyed. Very few artifacts were found during this work, as it apparently had already been looted, probably after the 8th century. And their walls have skulls and bones, and they're just piled neatly. You have like a row of regular bones, like a small wall, then a row of skulls, then you have rows of all kinds of bones and skulls, and so forth and so on. This goes on for about 4 tiers. Kind of crazy. Excuse me. So, and of course, you can get tickets. This is crazy that you can actually, I don't know. It's a morbid fascination. It really is. And I did not see a number. I mean, this is crazy how many people are underneath in these catacombs, with cities built on top, or churches, or some, everything's built on top of them. It's kind of crazy, I think. I have the hiccups. Great. Anyway, again, and that's what they look like. You have these tunnels and stuff, but against the wall, you have rows of all your other bones, and then a row of skulls. Then all kinds of bones, and I'm talking probably maybe 3 feet high. Then row of skulls, 3 feet row of skulls. Crazy, crazy. So it's a macabre fascination. Seriously, I really think they are. There's a lot of them under there. So crazy. Of course, there's a menorah in one. I mean, it's just, it's beautiful the way they did it. And I guess it's a way to honor the dead without, I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys, would you want to be put in a catacomb? Just wondering. Okay, we're going to go do a quick break here. We're going to come back with talk about the catacombs at the Sedlick Ossuary, Hallstatt Bone House, the Skull Chapel, the Chapel of Bones, and Skull Tower. What do you think of all that? This is all around here, and I think it was in Louisiana. That's where it was, and the town was built on top of the cemetery. The cemetery was underneath the town, because at the time, they had your cemetery in towns way back then, that we had mentioned earlier, and so this town was. I'm wondering why they had hauntings. Okay. Anyway, it's kind of crazy. Crazy stuff. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with some more terrifying tales of bones and skulls and all kinds of things. So we'll be right back.
Welcome to my nightmare. I think you're gonna like it. I think you're gonna feel you belong. A nocturnal vacation, unnecessary sedation. You wanna feel at home, 'cause you belong. Welcome to my nightmare.
Welcome to my breakdown. I hope I didn't scare you. That's just the way we are when we come down. We sweat and laugh and scream here, 'cause life is just a dream here. You know inside you feel right at home here. Welcome to my breakdown. Whoa. You're welcome to my nightmare, yeah. Welcome to my nightmare. I think you're gonna like it. I think you're gonna feel you belong. We sweat and laugh and scream here, 'cause life is just a dream. You know inside you feel right at home. Yeah. Welcome to my nightmare. Welcome to my breakdown.
Okay, welcome back to Creepy Crypts and Catacombs. So, we're going to start off with the Kam el Shokafa. This is in Alexandria, Egypt. It's one of the 7 wonders of the medieval ages, and it's also an archaeological site of great importance. The tombs were tunneled into the bedrock in the age of the Emperor's 2nd century AD. The catacombs were originally intended as a burial chamber for only one family, but the privately funded project was expanded to allow for many more people. The necropolis consists, in fact, of a series of Alexandrian tombs, statues, and archaeological objects of the pharaonic funeral cult, with Hellenistic and early imperial Roman influences. And Kam el Shokafa means mound of shards. This became the area used to contain a mound of shards of terracotta, which mostly consisted of jars and objects made of clay. These objects were left by those visiting the tombs who would bring food and wine during their visit. However, they did not wish to carry these containers home from this place of death, so they would break them and leave it there. So therefore the name. The catacombs of Kam el Shokafa consist of 3 levels cut through totally solid rock. The catacombs reach 100 feet down into the ground into solid rock. They are truly remarkable, and their existence testifies of its engineering feat of great magnitude. The funerary motifs are pure ancient Egyptian, but the architects and artists were schooled in the Greco-Roman style. Applied to the themes of ancient Egyptian religion, it has resulted in amazing integrated art, quite unlike anything else in the world. For example, some statues are Egyptian in style, but bear Roman clothes and hair. Okay. When you enter the catacombs, there is a circular staircase that takes the visitor several levels deep into the ground. To the left is a room where mourners of the deceased would sit and bring offerings. Then another staircase leads down to a room full of sculptures. There is a hall of Caracalla. This is entering the largest Roman mass burial chamber in Egypt. On the first level, there's a hallway that leads to the room. It's a mass burial chamber. Although this room was not intended to be a tomb, it does contain also horse bones and the bones of young Christian men massacred by order of the Emperor Caracalla in 215 AD. Okay, so these were massacred. Um, the vestibule and central tomb chamber are the main chambers. They are lit by a single electric light bulb that throws the chamber into a green. It throws the chamber into green. It's a perfect staging for the composite art. In the center of the facade, the familiar solar disk is carved below a frieze of serpents. Left and right are the two serpents wearing the crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. 3 sarcophagi have been found in the catacombs. They're evidence of 3 cultures, religions, and art that came together on Egyptian soil. Crazy. It's just, and again, it's one of the 7 wonders of the world because of the Middle Ages. This is how supposedly it was found. It's a story. According to legend, a donkey dragging a cart filled with stones in Alexandria, Egypt, accidentally fell into a pit in the ground. If this is true, the donkey may have earned the honor of discovering one of the most fantastic sights in history. It's these tombs, ancient catacombs, are unlike any other in the world of antiquity. As the historic records go, it was the man supposedly got a hold of somebody, and the museum, I guess, he informed the local museum about the site. This was in 1900. He told me he had come upon an underground tomb while digging, collecting stones in the area. First, of course, a curator was dubious about the report, but his doubts soon turned to be out to be unfounded. The largest burial site dating from the Greco-Roman period, a particularly interesting city of antiquity, and the blend of cultures and art. It was crazy. Of course, as a city, Alexandria picked its name probably after the most famous warrior history has witnessed, Alexander the Great, of course. It was here that the very first time a line of Greek rulers brought together the ancient Greek and Egyptian cultures. I wish I could show you pictures. It's crazy. There's a sarcophagus with a bas relief showing Egyptian gods and priests offering sacrifices. And the catacombs served their purpose around the 2nd century. There's, of course, not many surviving sites that depict the mixture of ancient cultures. And these, if you go down there, if you go down the walkway there, on either side there are niches for the bodies. As further archaeological evidence suggests, it is likely that the site initially served as a tomb for one family, again, but was later made into a bigger burial site. Plenty more burial sites were part of the necropolis, the so-called City of the Dead, and this was probably located in the western part of the city, as we're going to go to that too. I do believe City of the Dead. No. Okay. It was probably located in the western part of the city, as traditions suggest. Crazy. Yeah, there was probably a huge funerary chapel occupying the surface above the sarcophagus. There is only an 18-foot wide and round shaft descending underground that is left of this funerary structure. The shaft may also have enabled the process of lowering the bodies of the departed with a rope and pulley system. Windows placed in the shaft enable light to fall on a spiral staircase that moves down the site. There's nothing much at the uppermost part of the burial site, but it's still the passage to the heart of the structure. The middle level very much resembles a Greek temple, and then where the steps that lead to this part of the catacomb end, and in between 2 columns. In the chamber located behind the pronaos, intricate statues of a male and female, probably the original tenants of the tomb. It's just the mixture of the cultures, and it shows that in the reliefs and paintings on the wall. So, just above, at the head of the serpents, remember we talked about the circle, there was that, and then the serpents coming up. There is one more astounding depiction, and that of Medusa. A notorious creature of Greek mythology, she guards a burial site against intruders who might be trespassing. In the beginning, the middle section was solely a U-shaped corridor, but as more deceased were buried there, it eventually transformed into a labyrinth composed of more rooms and more halls. The level beneath the middle section adds to this time capsule of the lost ancient world. But unfortunately, the area is flooded, so they can't see what is there. The site, though built much earlier, has been featured as one of the 7 wonders of the Middle Ages. Crazy. We don't go there. Largest Roman burial sites. Crazy. There's, it fascinates me, yet it's like, woo. It's just wow. And of course, you can go ahead and get tickets, as usual with everything else here. So, that is crazy. So they had a place for the relatives to show their respect and eat and leave food and eat food. But it doesn't say how many bodies. Of course, they wouldn't know because that third level below is flooded out. So, interesting. So, we're going to Sedlec Ossuary next. Hope you're enjoying your trip today. Keep your arms and feet inside. Otherwise, they might get grabbed. Again, you can go visit these places. Crazy. Yep, get your tickets in advance. Okay. This is also known as the Church of Bones. Okay. Is one of the most unusual chapels you will ever see if you ever go there. The Sedlec Ossuary is nothing spectacular on the outside. It is a small chapel located in Sedlec in the subtle suburbs in the Czech Republic. You would think it was just an average old medieval Gothic church, of course. But as you enter the Sedlec Ossuary, though, you will soon realize why it is one of the most amazing and unique churches in the world. The Sedlec Ossuary is artistically decorated, mind you, by more than 40,000 human skeletons. 40,000 human skeletons it's decorated in. It is known as the Church of Bones. One of the most fascinating artistic works inside the ossuary is a big chandelier made of bones that lies in the center of the church. The immense chandelier contains at least one of every human bone. Okay, another impressive artwork is the coat of arms of the Schwarzenberg family that is also made of human bones. There are other macabre places to visit in Europe, of course, but the Sedlec Ossuary is really unique in nature. Do you wonder how all these bones ended up being in a small chapel located in the Czech Republic? Of course you do. So I'm going to tell you. It all goes back to 1278 when the King of Bohemia sent the abbot of Sedlec monastery to Jerusalem. When the abbot came back, he brought with himself a jar of soil from Golgotha that was known as the holy soil. Soon people from all over the places desired to be buried in Sedlec. Thus the cemetery had to be expanded. In the 15th century, a Gothic church was built near the cemetery, and its basement was used as an ossuary. The bones stayed there for centuries till 1870, when a woodcarver named Rint was appointed to place the bones in order. The result was impressively shocking. So you can travel. It's in Prague, so go for it, in the Czech Republic. And then you'll take an hour trip to where this is at. The 40,000 dead people wish to be buried in a holy place, which is why they went to Sedlec in the first place. And now their bones are right in the middle of the chapel. So it may look like a church, but you go in and it's all bones. All bones. Crazy. That is, can you imagine? I wish I could show you pictures. I really do, because they are amazing. Check them out if you have a chance. That is just crazy. Go inside and it's all made of bones. 40,000 skeletons. 40,000. So there you go. The Church of Bones. Now we're going to take a visit to the Hallstatt Bone House. And it probably implies what it says. Crazy, crazy. It's also known as the Hallstatt Charnel House. Not cool. Excuse me. Not cool, I don't think. It's a world famous charnel house in St. Michael's Chapel. The Hallstatt Bone House. Alongside the world's oldest salt mine and the idyllic world-famous postcard view, the Charnel House or Bone House is one of the most interesting sites in Hallstatt. The chapel dates back to the 12th century and is located next to the Catholic parish church. Each year, visitors throughout the world come to admire the unusual collection of over 600 artistically painted skulls. Okay. Many of the skulls were decorated at the end of the 18th century, but a few are actually from the 20th century. Skull painting was carried out primarily during the 19th century and belonged to a cultural era that mainly consisted of the eastern Alpine region. Even during modern times, this custom has still been in use in Hallstatt. Hallstatt is home to the largest collection of skulls ever, with few other collections still in existence. When an existing grave was reused for a new burial, the skull or bones were transferred to the charnel house or ossuary as part of a second funeral. The identity of the deceased family member was preserved by decorative paintings and inscriptions. Depending on the family relationship or based on artist choice, the skulls were labeled with names or initials. At times, no markings were used to identify the deceased. It is clear various methods of painting were implemented. There is also evidence that the painting style followed a particular development. It's also apparent in the manner in which the names and initials were written. Prior to a study from 1974 to 1993, there were conceptions regarding the painting which did not correspond with the actual artist's artistic development. It was also accepted that the skulls had been placed in the charnel house due to a lack of space in the churchyard. From 1948 to 1950, 2,100 skulls, both painted and unpainted, were documented. Since there were approximately 30,000 entries in the Turf Dead Registry prior to 1900, it's clear that the remains of the individual house and the charnel house represent only a small fraction. There's evidence of family tradition in the skull paintings, and numerous painters were active during this time. Skulls with wreaths are the oldest. The darker the wreath, the older the skull. Thin wreaths and colored crosses with contoured edges are the latest examples. Flower ornamentation on the forehead marks the next phase of artistic development, followed by green leaves, oak, oleander. A black cross on the forehead was almost always included. Wow. Latin script and comparatively narrow crosses were in the late 19th century. At times, skulls only carry the name of the individual. Some paintings are copies of earlier examples. That's crazy. The charnel house. So they reused the cemetery and put the other ones in there. And they painted all of them. Wow. That would be kind of cool to see. I have a picture here. I wish I could show you. It's in Austria, Hallstatt, Austria, the charnel house. And the skulls are painted. Okay, you want your skull painted? That's where you take it, apparently. Skull Chapel is up next. I think it says it all right there. What do you guys think of all this? Would you want to be part of this? We're going to Skull Chapel in Rome. Wow. Crazy, crazy. All right, the Skull Chapel. Great. Just insane. I don't know. I think that's, I don't know. Do you think that's kind of a desecration to people that they take their bones from the cemetery and then put them somewhere like that? Maybe not. It's a way to preserve it. It's very fascinating what they've done with all this. But if we add them all up, I mean, there's just over 1 million bones, human bones and skulls and the bodies of everybody. That's crazy. Oh, just crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay. There's all kinds of skull chapels everywhere. So let's go to Poland. There are skull chapels in Poland and everywhere. Okay, this is interesting. This is the chapel in Poland. It's constructed out of thousands of human bones. Okay. From the road, it would be easy to overlook this small, unassuming chapel located in one of the oldest towns in southwestern Poland. But the wooden doors hide a spectacular, macabre interior. The skulls and leg bones of over 3,000 victims of wars and plagues cover the walls and ceiling and a crypt below, accessible through a trapdoor. There you go. It houses over 21,000 additional remains below between 1776 and 1804. So you're talking 24,000 bones in this place. Between 1776 and 1804, the local priests painstakingly gathered, cleaned, and carefully arranged skeletons recovered from numerous shallow mass graves left by the 30 Years' War, Silesian Wars, and cholera outbreaks. Again, modeled off of similar ossuaries and catacombs in Rome, the chapel was intended as a shrine for the dead, as well as a memento mori for the living. On the church's altar, he placed the bones of important figures and curiosities, including the skull of the local mayor, skulls with bullet holes, a skull deformed by syphilis, and the bones of a supposed giant. There you go, Ike. When the chapel's creator passed away in 1804, his skull was placed on the altar as well. So you go inside, and the walls are made up of bones. It's crazy. Shin bones decorate the ceiling. Skulls line the walls, and over 21,000 bodies are buried in the basement. That is crazy. So that is the Skull Chapel in Poland. Chapel of Skulls in Portugal. We'll hit that real quick. We only have 2 more then. You're probably thinking, "My God, she's almost done." This is also crazy. There's a church of San Francisco, or Skull Chapel, in Portugal, about 87 miles from Lisbon. Inside this church, next to the cloister of the former Franciscan monastery, in the place where the monk cells were once located, is the frightful Chapel of Bones. Okay. This peculiar chapel was built in the Gothic style throughout the 15th and 16th century. Specifically, there were 3 monks who were in charge of the planning and building of the site between 1460 and 1510. It is said that the monks' reasoning for the chapel was to bring their brothers to the contemplation of the volatile and transitory nature of life. At the time of the Chapel of Bones construction, the city's 2 Franciscan cemeteries were overflowing, of course, and the remains had to be exhumed to create more space. That's when 3 of the monks thought to create a chapel with the bones and skulls serving as decoration for the walls, columns, arches, and domes. Moreover, the bone fragments were decided upon to form part of the mortar. It is estimated that at least 5,000 cadavers were used in construction. To access the Chapel of Bones, you must pass through a door with the following message. Translated, "We bones are here, waiting for yours." Okay, good. A reference, no doubt, to the concept of the futility of human existence. The Chapel of Bones measures 18.7, 61 feet long, and 36 feet wide. Carefully arranged bones and skulls decorate its walls and columns. The roof is built of white brick and decorated with different motifs associated with death. The arches framing the small windows found within are decorated with skulls, and the play in light and shadow gives them a ghostly appearance. Yeah, I'll bet. Another of the legends that exist about the origin of the bones asserts they came from a catastrophe that devastated the town of Montmayor. The story goes that disaster occurred during a thunderstorm in which the area, through a twist of fate, unleashed a thunderbolt on the great arsenal stored within the castle keep. Okay. Of the approximately 1,100 homes in the town, more than 800 were said to have been destroyed. The thousands of recovered bodies were then buried in a mass grave. However, after 30 years, remains were dug up to build the chapel as tribute to the victims. So there you go. In addition to the thousands of human bones that decorate the chapel, 2 human mummies are found hanging from one of the walls. One of the corpses corresponds to an adult man, and the other is a young child. Both are hung for visitors, chained to the same wall. Although identities are unknown, of course, apparently they were found together and hung there. One legend has it they were father and son, and the son mistreated his mother in an act of which the father was accomplice. When the mother was dying, she is thought to have cursed them both. "May the earth of your graves not be destroyed." Wow, okay. Another legend claims the man was an adulterer and the child his sinful offspring. In the end, the only thing for certain about the 2 bodies is that they have been hanging in the chapel of the They've been hanging in this Chapel of Bones since the 17th century. I wish I could show you a picture. It's creepy. Oh, God. That is insane. Insane. Okay, let's go to the Capella de Ossos. Crazy, crazy. This isn't a very uncommon thing, which I was surprised to see. There were so many. Okay, this is the Capella dos Ossos. crazy. The Capella dos Ossos, Chapel of Bones. It's a fascinating chapel with a macabre atmosphere. Ranking as one of Ivoria's most visited sites, this eerie tourist attraction is not for the faint-hearted. This small, unassuming chapel is actually home to the final resting place of hundreds of bodies, all exhumed from the city's graveyards in the 16th century. Thousands of bones and skulls are embedded in the walls. I mean, it is creepy. Walk inside the chapel and you can feel a chill down your spine when you realize that human bones are incorporated into every aspect of the chapel interior. There are actually 5,000 bones intricately cast into the cement from floor to ceiling. Despite its appearance, it was constructed out of necessity and is more than just a religious curiosity. So those 5,000 bones, that was just mixed in with the cement. There you go. They used it. Of course, during this time, apparently, everywhere you go, because of the cholera, because of the wars, because of just nature, graveyards were just overflowing. So they were exhumed to make way for the new bodies. The bones were respectfully cast into the cement and housed in a place of worship. The idea was that the bodies would be closer to God, too. Crazy. This is Capella dos Ossos. It's one of the best known in Portugal. They're just everywhere, apparently. You wouldn't even know what it was. Crazy. And this one was built in the 16th century by a Franciscan friar who, in the Counter-Reformation spirit of the era, wanted to prod his fellow brothers into contemplation and transmit the message of life being transitory. Just crazy. It's not very big. Light enters through small openings on the left. Its walls and 8 pillars are decorated in carefully arranged bones and skulls held together by the cement, which 5,000 bones were mixed in with. The ceiling is made of white painted brick and is painted with death motifs. The number of skeletons of friars was calculated to be about 5,000. But of course, there are thousands more from the cemeteries, so there you go. Those are just from the friars. Coming from the cemeteries situated inside several dozen churches. 2 desiccated corpses, of course, are in glass display cases. At the roof of the chapel, the phrase, of course, in Portuguese, but it means, better is the day of death than the day of birth. So, there you go. Now we go to the last one, which is known as Skull Tower. I can just imagine. I mean, it's morbid, it's kind of creepy, but it was a necessity at the time. I could understand it, and at least they did something to honor the dead. Skull Tower. Serbia's Skull Tower. And here we go. Centuries of vicious occupation will always throw a grim story or 3. The nature of medieval subjugation and liberation lends itself to the worst excesses of the human mind becoming reality. And the famous Skull Tower comes straight from here. This is the story of Serbia's most grisly monument. Of course, despite centuries of strength and development, Serbia was in a vulnerable state when the 14th century came around. The kingdom was shot, a situation not helped at all by the ever-increasing strength of the Ottomans. It was a matter of time before the Islamic Empire invaded, and it did invade. The southern city fell in 1385, passing fit back and forth before the Ottomans consolidated their games in the 1400s. Then, 241 years of misery began. Horrific stories of Turkish atrocities abound, many of which were chronicled by travelers passing through the area at the time. The city changed hands a few more times during the 17th and 18th centuries. Independence was a long, long way. The empire was weakening and the uprisings were inevitable. The first one began in February 1804. Although the name of it should tell you all you need to know. It was the first Serbian uprising. The Serbian rebels were poorly organized and beset by infighting. Stefan found himself in such position in May of 1809. His army of 8,000 men was woefully outnumbered, and they were overwhelmed. Stefan knew that unspeakable horrors awaited his men if they were captured. So the man decided to take drastic action. As his trench was overrun, he shot at a gunpowder keg and caused a huge explosion, killing everyone in the area. The vizier wasn't exactly overjoyed at this show of patriotic defiance, so he ordered the heads of the rebels be removed from the corpses. Before being skinned and stuffed and sent to Mahmud II. Now there you go. He decapitated them, skinned them, and stuffed them, and sent them to the Sultan. The Sultan presumably appreciated the offering before he sent the heads back to be put to use. Okay. Well, isn't that just lovely? The Skull Tower was thus built in the city. It stood some 4.5 meters high, 14 rows of 17 skulls on 4 sides, numbering 952 dismembered domes. This wasn't unique for Ottoman-conquered lands, and such monuments were often built in an attempt to install fear and terror. Well, I guess that worked. It would work for me. The skulls often fell out of the tower. Many were also stolen by thieves and distraught relatives, of course, the latter of whom believed they could recognize the heads and took them away for burial. But mostly the skulls stayed there, striking fear into the souls of any Serb. With the tide well and truly turning against the Ottoman Empire, the last governor made the decision to remove the skulls. By the 1860s, they were achieving little other than fostering resentment amongst the local Serbs. And it returned to Serbian hands on January 11th, 1878. A chapel was built around the tower, and the search for the lost skulls was on. Destroying the tower was never a question. It was imperative to keep it standing as a reminder to future generations of the sacrifices made. The Skull Tower thus stands as a silent monument to struggle. It is still the most important singular monument today. Well, that was nice. Oh my God. They were actually embedded into the tower. That is grisly. I mean, I get it, but wow. I don't know what they probably would have done more to them, but to decapitate them, skin them, and then stuff them. Oh dear God, what in the world? That's just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. But this kind of thing is all over in Europe, especially in Europe. But again, like in Louisiana, there's a town built on top of the cemetery. They never moved the bodies; it would be too expensive, so they built the town on it. So there you go. So I wonder how many cities and towns are like that. Could account for hauntings and apparition sightings, etc. So wow, that's just crazy. Can you imagine sending heads to somebody, then they send them back and put them to use? They built the tower. That's just crazy. Yeah, that would have deterred me. Wow. And the head of the rebel cause there, his skull was placed on the top. It was a 15-foot tower. That's crazy. Wow.
So there you go. And there are the stories of the creepy crypts and catacombs around the world. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, happy anniversary to KBLP, LLC, and everyone out there. Ike, Chris, Michelle, Stephen, Zach, Sonia, and thank you to all our listeners. Rachel, thank you. Lindsay, thank you. And anybody else who comes in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Rocket, thank you for checking out at least Freaks in the Basement, okay? We're going to be starting sports soon. Of course, The Walking Dead will be on. American Horror Story will be on. We have lots of stuff coming up. There is no doubt. So stay tuned for the schedule for those. It's kind of crazy. I'm going to be a little busy, but that's okay. I hope you enjoy them all. I really do. You can check out our shows on KBLP LLC Facebook page. You can check our shows out on KBLP LLC 4 on YouTube. I always want to put it together. I don't know why. I've always done that. It just sounds right. I don't know why. So thank you, Sonia and Rachel, for stopping in tonight. May give you nightmares. Ooh. Well, then I did my job. You're welcome. So, yeah, happy anniversary to everybody out there at KBLP LLC. We have Freaks in the Basement with our own Chris Stevens. We have Ecto and Encounters, Michelle Auger and myself. Thank you, Michelle, so much. And we also do Planet B period, O period, B period. Yes, some of our stuff is controversial, but it needs to be talked about. So, catch our shows at one of the places. DWD, on Friday, Hollywood Review, Zach Vladbrad, yay! Ike with the Jam on Saturdays, Ike Dog, The Boss. So there you go. So happy anniversary, everybody. If you missed it, you'll just have to go through the podcast to hear my anniversary song to you. So there you go. Okay, going to play some music. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe learned something. Don't be a rebel. Apparently, you're going to lose your head. Yeah, don't lose your head, okay? All right, guys, you have a great night. Have a great rest of the weekend. Peace out, y'all.
I love the dead before they're cool. The bluing flesh for me to hold. Cadaver eyes upon me see nothing. Dead before they rise. No farewells, no goodbyes. I never even knew your now rotting face. While friends and lovers mourn your silly grave, I have other uses for you, darling.
Thank